Hey, what's up, everybody? The parawing season is just about to kick off in the gorge, so I wanted to revisit the boards that I rode last year during my first season as a parawinger. So that first season, I got about 1,000 miles in, and I transitioned through multiple boards during that time, and they each have had their strengths and weaknesses. And my hope is that you will, depending on where you're at, whether you're a brand new parawinger or if you're like looking for your second board or looking for your third board, that this video will help you out with making some of those decisions. So starting off, this board on the top is the Sunova Aviator 18. It's going to be 6'6" long, 18 inches wide, and 90 liters. I'm 86 kilos, and I always look at something that I call the barge factor. I'll put a link to my website and you can read about this, but that's a calculation that you can use that takes the board dimensions and the liters and your weight, combines it into a takeoff value so you know how easy the takeoff should be on the board. This board has a 4.59 barge factor, which is really high. This is a mini downwind board. It's extremely efficient. It takes off really, really well. When I first learned how to parawing, this board helped me out a lot because I didn't understand exactly how to chip in using swell. I didn't understand exactly how to generate power with the parawings. So this board or any other board of this design that's a little bit longer, a little bit narrower, with a little more volume, that's going to help you out as a beginner parawinger. The things that are positive about this board, all that efficiency, that extra volume, all that good stuff, there can be some drawbacks down the road. So first things first, when you go to learn how to parawing, and when I first took this out on my first day, I thought that this board was actually going to be impossible because I thought it was too tippy. I I personally am really good at balancing on narrow boards with a wing, and I've got a special technique that I use and it works great. But with the parawing, I felt like it was impossible to find my balance until somebody had mentioned this idea of like, hey, when you're sitting on your board, hook into your harness so that you can go hands-free from the parawing. If you're going to start out on a really narrow board, or if you're learning the parawing and you're having trouble getting to your feet, hooking in while you're sitting on the board so you can get to all fours on the board is going to help out a lot. So that's something that this board, while the efficiency once you're on your feet is really great, the initial water start does require a little bit of a change in your technique. Now, the other thing, once you progress and you become more confident and more aggressive in your riding, I feel like an 18-inch board is a little bit limiting. So because of the fact that I can't offset my feet really dramatically on an 18-inch board, and you can see this deck pad does not go all the way to the edge. So typically I have, a bit of my foot hanging off this side and my toes are actually cupping the edge of the rail here. That was a major reason why I decided to like start to transition away from this board. And then the other thing is, when I got this board, I didn't consider the implications of the thickness. And the thickness of a board doesn't, I hear a lot of people complain about thickness and thickness being bad, but I don't hear it quantified as exactly why it doesn't work for people. And for me, I don't mind the thickness at all. It does change the roll a little bit. But the problem I have with thickness is when I touch rails while carving. I feel like the thicker the rail is, the more the rail tends to grab the water. And this board specifically, having a thick rail and being 6'6", when it grabs, sometimes it just pulls me down. I just can't get the rail to release and it just pulls me over and I have to do a restart. So awesome, awesome board. This dramatically accelerated my first 10 sessions on the parawing. Highly recommend learning on something like this if you get the opportunity, but then you will naturally progress to the next board. All right, this board is a custom Sunova Carver, and this board is 77 liters, 5'11" long, 20 wide. And the barge factor on this one is 3.22. So on the other one, it was 4.59, and now we're dropping all the way down to 3.22. So we're losing a ton of takeoff ability, but we're gaining some other things with this board. Now, I switched to this board as my second one because this is the board that I primarily wing. I like mid lengths. I think they're great. I enjoy falling in the water, and mid lengths around 6 foot or longer tend to have really quick restarts, and I value a faster restart so that I can have more crashes, try more things, and not get exhausted by just trying to get back on foil. So this one, when I started riding this with the Parawing, I really fell in love. I had to figure out how to use the swell to give me a push. And once I got that figured out, and I was kind of using this board more like I would downwind paddle, and I was chipping in on swell in that fashion, this board became really, really fun to ride. The benefits of having a shorter board are real. It changes the characteristics of the ride and the playfulness of the board. That's a real thing. When you go from 6'6" down to 5'11", there's a bit of a change, and you can feel it. But as you go shorter, your board again becomes thicker and thicker, and then we get back to that issue with the rail thickness. This board releases the water grabs much better than the 6'6". However, there's still a little bit of a grab there. You can still feel that pull. So if you are surfing really aggressively, and I ride a 75 centimeter mast, so I am constantly really close to the water. I like riding that way. I don't want to change my riding style to avoid touching the water at all costs. Like, I think touching the water is part of the fun. So this board was great. I absolutely loved it. It has all the takeoff I needed once I understood how to use a Parawing. The length was totally reasonable. The width at 20 inches, I can ride my biggest foil, the Silk 1050, and with an offset stance, I can really just throw this board rail to rail really, really aggressively, which I really appreciate. So this board was amazing for me. I put a lot of mileage on this one, and then we got to the end of the season, and I decided to have one more experiment before the season came to an end. All right, this board is a stock Sunova Pilot Mid, and this is the 6.5 by 1968 liter. So if you remember, I'm 86 kilos, and in the wintertime with all my wet gear on, I'm definitely over 90 kilos. So this is definitively a sinker board for me. And the reason I bought this last minute as an experiment was because I was again looking at that barge factor, and I had this idea in my head of, hey, I've always run this calculation, and I've always thought, hey, it seems really, really reliable, but what would happen if you went with a longer, more efficient board, but you dropped the volume, and then the barge factor stayed exactly the same? So on that Carver, I had 77 liters, and my takeoff value was 3.22. On this board, I'm at 68 liters, but because it's longer at 6.5, narrower at 19, the takeoff value is almost exactly the same. The barge factor is 3.24. So I wanted to know, number one, was this calculation that I came up with and have been using for a couple of years now real? Was it accurate? And then number two, what are the pros and cons of that change? So first off, the takeoff on it, totally accurate. It feels like it takes off just as well as the higher volume mid-length that I had. But there are some very, very critical differences that are worth looking at and acknowledging if you are developing as a parawinger and looking at your next board. So at 68 liters, if you are underpowered or if you are slogging, for me, at 86 kilos, I cannot slog on this board while standing on my feet. I can't do it. It sinks too quickly, and then I fall off the board and I have to do a full restart. With the 77, Same takeoff value, but with the 77, I can stand on that and I can wait for a gust. So that means when it's borderline and you don't have the right size parawing, having a little bit more volume is pretty much always going to save you. I have not found any circumstance where when the wind is dying, less volume and a better shape works. You need to be able to get to your feet, and if you can't get to your feet, you're not going to get on foil. So that's the big one. If you're slogging, you're going to lose something. However, in flight, and this is where I think a lot of people get super hung up on, how easy is the takeoff, and you should be focused on that, but you should also try to balance your outlook and think about what the benefits are going to be in flight. So this board in flight has some really cool characteristics. When I'm carving and I grab a rail on the water with this board, it releases very readily. It's gotten thinner. So going 6.5 by 19, the board has just gotten thinner and thinner and thinner. And then this design especially has a really thin actual rail here. So this board, when I grab a rail, there's a bit of concavity built into this. It's not anything extreme. You can't visually see it. But if you put a ruler across this, you'll see just the slightest dip through the center. And when I grab a rail, I can give the tiniest bit of toe pressure on the rail that's up out of the water, and the rail that's in the water releases immediately. And I love that. The concavity in this board also makes it feel like I can throw it rail to rail just as well as the wider 20-inch board. So the 19 does a really good job at that. The other thing that's really cool, being 6'5", when I have a heavy touchdown, if I see myself coming off foil, if I can reposition myself so that I land on a swell face, I can glide down the swell face and then pump at the bottom and come right back up onto the foil. With the higher volume but shorter and wider, I can't do that. If I do a heavy touchdown on that, it doesn't matter as much. I'm gonna come off foil and I'm gonna have to do a restart. Whereas this one, I can actually glide down the swell face and then pump back onto foil without redeploying my parawing. So that's super cool. And then in the air, in flight, the difference is, for me, it's pretty minimal. I really like a roll-based feeling. Longer boards are going to encourage more roll. They're not going to encourage pitch. So a longer board is going to be more pitch stable. So if you're a beginner and you're working on your foot switches and things like that, or if you just don't like a pitchy foiling experience, longer boards are going to be a little more pitch stable, and they're going to encourage you to roll. I ride medium aspect foils, so I'm always focused on roll. So all of those things add up to working really, really well on this board. What else can I say? I was super excited about how the calculations worked out. I'm really glad that the takeoff value was the same. And while this board does not slog anywhere near as well, I will say it prone paddles much better. And I know that because I have had to prone paddle home on it a few times. So even though I'm dropping a little bit of leaderage, the shape of the board is so efficient that when I do prone paddle, I feel like I'm moving really quickly. That's about it. This is going to be my daily driver going into this season. I'm typically riding in strong conditions, and this board is going to be really fun. If there's anything that I would change about it, I would maybe try dropping 1 inch off the length. Something that you should know if you are parawinging longer boards is that when you do have, over 6 foot, you can loop the lines over the nose while you're sitting in the water, and that's kind of a bummer because you're leaning forward and trying to unhook the lines. But other than that, all the benefits, the high performance, the thinner rails, the ease of which the takeoff is, the ease of which the touchdowns are, I have found that I really liked and am happy with the fact that I progressed to a board of this shape and this size. So again, to just recap, if you're new, get yourself something super efficient, at least, neutral volume, go with some length, make it skinny, just get yourself up on foil over and over and over again so you can learn how the parawing works, learn how the pack down goes, and then focus on your swell riding. Once you've got your swell riding figured out and you're not falling as much, start looking at other boards. Maybe you are a person who really, really loves short boards. If that's the case, go that direction. There's lots of other people out there that can give you advice on that. If you're somebody that, like myself, who enjoys crashing and trying new things all the time and is constantly doing restarts, I would encourage you to look for a high performance mid length, something that's got extra length but is really thinned out so that it's going to feel really good. It's going to feel fast. It's going to feel nimble. It's going to give you really good restarts, and you're not going to have this fear of falling, which sucks. If you're trying to progress and you're trying new things and you're scared of falling in the water, it absolutely sucks. All right, that's all I've got for you. If you have any questions, please drop them below. Otherwise, I hope to see you at the river.